Okay. Welcome to the Pelham Board of Education work session on mental health in our schools on February 2nd, 2022. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Sue, could we please have a reiteration of the executive session motions?
Yes, the board met in executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or persons.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple opening remarks from me, and then I'll pass it to Dr. Champ. Welcome to tonight's board work session on social emotional wellness and mental health in our schools. From discussions in our community outreach and advocacy committee meetings and some outreach from the community, it's become apparent that the purpose of work sessions isn't widely understood. Unlike our business meetings, which follow the usual pattern of administrative and committee updates, financial reports and motions, policy monitoring and governance, personnel recommendations, and public comment, work sessions give the board the opportunity to focus on important topics related to our schools in a public meeting so the community can learn along with us. Through the time our administrators, teachers, and support staff give to providing thoughtful work session presentations to the board, we as members of the board get the chance to take a deeper dive on district programs which become pertinent to the decisions we make throughout the year. For example, during the year of the bond, the board's work sessions focused on the capital needs around the district. The year following the adoption of the strategic plan, work sessions focused on each of the district's strategic goals. This year's work sessions have focused on students' academic and emotional needs in light of the pandemic. In advance of tonight's work session, I would like to thank Julia Chung, who's our Assistant Superintendent for People Personnel Services, Anne Marie Nardone, and our school counselors, our school psychologists, our school social workers, and principals who are here with us tonight, who created a thoughtful and informative presentation for the board. This topic had originally been slated for November, and for scheduling purposes, we had to move it to this week's meeting. In many ways, it feels this session is better placed at this point in the year so we can get a clearer and more up-to-date picture of the needs of students as we begin budgeting for next year. While public comment is usually reserved for our regular business meetings, we know that there are many evolving topics and questions circling schools at this time. For this reason, there will be a public comment session at this meeting. So now I'll turn it to Dr. Champ.
Great, thanks so much, Jessica. And first, I just want to start by thanking the board again for your patience and for allowing me the leave of absence for the last 7 weeks to be with my husband and care for him while he recuperates. Thankfully, he's on the mend. It's going to be a long road, but he's definitely better on a daily basis. It's been incredible to watch, and I've just been very, very thankful and counting my many blessings. So again, thank you for your patience and giving me the time to really take care of that so that I could come back and fully devote my energies and focus back to the district. So I'm very excited to be back, to see lots of faces I haven't seen in a long time, and I really look forward to catching up and hope everyone had a great holiday and has been healthy. Especially want to thank Dr. Loro for stepping in for the 7 weeks. I could not have asked for a better person to come in and to fill in, to dive in, I should say. We were supposed to have 2 days of overlap at the beginning, and then I came down with a cold. So we got 1 day together, and thankfully it wasn't COVID. But because he's hired so many of the staff in the district, he knows the communities, he knows the schools, he knows the district expectations, he knows just the lay of the land. And I have to say, Jim put it in such a way I think made sense. He also had fresh legs. He hasn't been dealing with COVID for the last 2 years like we have. So to have someone who was able to come in with a fresh energy was really, really great, and just appreciated him diving in and really taking care of things so well. So significant thanks to him. Knowing him, he's probably watching tonight because he just wants to see everything through. And totally. You could see he thrived on the dynamic energy of being back in the schools. So thank you to him for that. I just want to touch on a few things tonight. I know I sent an email recently regarding the future of masking in our schools. And first off, just wanted folks to know that that is our intention. Once the time comes where we're no longer required under the same requirements that we are now, we don't know what requirements may be at place at that time, but when we are able to allow masking to become optional, that is our plan to do so. We just saw across email a couple nights ago that there was, we haven't put anything out on it yet because we still haven't gotten legal counsel, but in essence, it was a continuation of the stay related to that court order that sounds like nothing will change till at least March 2nd. That was the date in the notice, so we're still bound to continue under the same regulations that we have now till at least then. There are a lot of open questions that a lot of superintendents, a lot of districts are all waiting to hear about. No one knows if there are going to be metrics around the release of any mask mandate date. They don't know if it's going to be sudden, if it's just going to be, it's over and you can do what you want, or if there's going to be any strings tied to that. So that's part of what we're going to have to assess at the time. There's a lot about the guidance right now that is in place that will be problematic if we go mask optional, especially relating to quarantining. So we're hoping that there's adjustments and changes to the quarantine guidance. The question, we don't know if there's going to be state guidance at that point, state DOH, or if we're going to be beholden to CDC guidance, to state. We don't exactly know all of what the landscape will look like at that point in time, which is why we can't give really specific answers yet. But all those questions are being asked, and certainly we're collaborating with other districts. But just really wanted folks to know to start preparing for that time. For a lot of students, that's going to be a big transition. Our youngest students, in some cases, don't know school without masks, and that'll be an adjustment period. So we wanted just folks to start getting themselves prepared for that. So again, we don't expect anything to change before March 2nd based on the stay that we saw, but will be, as we get actual legal guidance from our legal counsel, we will certainly keep folks updated on that. Maybe I'll pause there before I go any further, see if there's any other questions around that particular item, because I know that's certainly a very important one.
So
Yeah.
I know there's been some conversation about vaccine thresholds maybe being a contingency for
Yes.
allowing mask optional. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah,
please?
thank you. I've heard mixed versions on whether that people think that'll actually be the case or not. But one thing we have been doing, and I've got to thank our school nurses did an incredible amount of work to get the most updated information on our vaccination rates. And those are now posted on our website. If you go to the district website, on the home page,
And it was linked in the letter you sent.
it was linked in the letter that we sent, yes, that we sent. It's also, just wanted to try to point people to it in case, so they don't have to go find that email. If you go right to the home page, you'll see the 2021-22 school year plans tab. If you click on that and go to the COVID-19 case vaccination data, you see that we've updated that dashboard. We're continuing to track the county as well as our own district positivity rate. On the right, you see now the staff teacher vaccination totals. And then below that, you'll see student vaccination by school. So you can see where the schools stand in regards to that. So we don't know if there's going to be a threshold set. It certainly would be great if, PTAs, if folks wanted to try to get some of those vaccination rates up. I know there was talk about advocacy for something around an 80-85% threshold for moving to mask optional, but I don't think that ever became anything, certainly isn't anything that's in place now. But that is kind of a number that folks were batting around, thinking maybe we should aim for that to be prepared. But as you can see, we've got a variety, span a couple of our buildings. 3 of our buildings are already over 80%. So it'd be nice to see those other buildings get a little bit higher there. We're also continuing to post our COVID-19 testing results on a weekly basis as well, because we know that's going to be one thing that's really important when we do move to mask optional, for parents to be able to make educated decisions for their child based on what they feel comfortable with on vaccination rates, on testing positivity rates, whether they want their child to remain masked or not. And again, it's different per building, so I think it's important that folks can look at those things.
I just had one other question. So I know at the time, prior to the court ruling, there were some districts that had already made the decision to go mask optional. Is it your understanding now that the state is requiring all districts
Yes.
to continue with masking?
Yes, and the reason, from what I understand from talking among superintendents, a few districts did shift to mask optional for the day after the court case. They all happen to have the same legal counsel firm, and different legal counsels interpreted things differently. So the bulk of the region interpreted it as the stay, in essence, was automatically in place. One firm interpreted it differently, and that was the districts who shifted to mask optional. But my understanding is that all of them, once the stay was formally in place, had to retract that and go back to mask required.
Mask was Tuesday.
Thank you. You're welcome. Any other questions around that?
No, but I'd like to make a motion to appoint the clerk pro tem.
Oh,
It comes after the opening remarks.
Oh,
So that's why
I
they didn't
thought yours
put
was
it.
the opening remarks. I'm sorry.
Well, they didn't put two placeholders for us, so.
Okay, forgive me. I'll
Okay.
withdraw the motion.
Thank you. Either way is fine.
so maybe I'll just touch on a couple of the things, then we can move into the next pieces of the meeting. So I just want to shout out to Dr. Callahan and Dr. Regal from the Junior League who hosted the Women in Motion movie last night as part of the Diversity in STEM movie series. Incredible, really incredible, well thought out series, and great partnership with the Junior League, with the Picture House, sponsored by the PEF. I think the library and maybe the civics are also in there. A tremendous partnership. We had a great turnout last night. It was exciting to see so many students and their families turn out for that. I hope folks will continue to tune into that series as it continues. Also want to remind folks that very exciting in celebration of Black History Month, we've got the Pelham Poetry Slam coming up on the 9th here at the high school. I think it was spearheaded originally by the Colonial Diversity Committee, so thank you to them. And thank you to them for allowing it to become a district effort. So we're looking forward to that. It will be limited seating due to distancing, so once the registration info comes out, please do register if you want to come in person. I believe it's also being live streamed as well, so if you can't make it in person or don't get in time for registration, you will still have access to that. And finally, one other piece. I know all of our schools put out wonderful newsletters. The high school put one out very recently, very nice, comprehensive of the first marking period. And there's lots in there. If you didn't have a chance to look through it, please do. The one thing I wanted to highlight was announced while I was not here, so I didn't have a chance to announce it myself, but incredibly exciting, the Regeneron Scholars. We had not just one, but 2 students selected as Regeneron top scientists. So Andrew Kelly and Lou, very excited for their continued work in this, and I think that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Congratulations again to Dr. Callahan, to Mr. Baltekis, and Mr. DeBello for their mentorship and guidance of these students. That is an incredible honor for school to have anyone selected, and to have 2 students is just really speaks so highly of our science department, of our science research program, and the caliber of our students. So congratulations to them. And that ends my report tonight.
Does anybody have any other questions for Dr. Champ?
You reminded me when you spoke about the movie
Yeah.
that I had gone to the book talk about the boy who harnessed the wind, and it was I was so impressed. That was a really fun activity, and I was sharing with people that it was the only time I've been in a book club that I mentioned it to my son who's in 4th grade, and he knew all about the book because they've done it in their class too. So it was a really good activity, I thought.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was great about the series. It's like some of the best of authentic learning, because it's so embedded into what the kids do right within the curriculum, K-12, and it's just like a whole community wraparound of a really exciting topic. So thank you for sharing that. And that reminds me too, I got to watch, a number of us got to watch a science fair, science research symposium. And,
It was incredible.
Just
I
incredible.
Definitely intimidated one of my kids from continuing at the program, but it is so impressive what Mr. Baltekis and that whole team do.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
So, very good.
Great.
John, was there anything you wanted to add?
Is it time for my motion?
I thought, yeah, okay. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint the clerk pro tem.
Sure, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? I'm going to appoint Alex Wolf.
Okay.
Your motion is to appoint Alex Wolf.
Oh, Alex. It's you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'd like to make another motion to move up public comment, since I think we have members of the community here for public comment. We'd love you to stay for the work session, but I don't want to keep you if that's not your plan. So first of all, do I have a motion to move public
moved.
comment? A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so it's been a little while since we've had a group, so I'll just read this. So we're about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. We believe it's crucial to hear from our community members about their concerns and their issues, and we're here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, the board may not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we want to take the concerns and questions that are raised seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, have the relevant staff member get back to you within a week's time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we're unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel or students. Please know, however, that we take personnel and student concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels, such as your school principal and our assistant superintendents or Dr. Champ. We want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience address their comments to me as the board president rather than the audience. And finally, I want to remind everybody that the board is accessible in addition to public comment at our board email at boe@pelhamschools.org. The board will now entertain public comment. Please remember to state your name, Pelham mailing address, and to keep your comments brief to allow sufficient time for other members of the public to speak if they wish. Do we have a sign-in sheet? I don't know if we do.
I don't think we do.
Okay. I don't have a sign-in sheet, so I don't know if anybody wanted to. It's on the table. If somebody wants to come up, you can. More for my.
Good evening, Connie Carmody, 180 Jackson Avenue. First and foremost, I would like to thank the board for taking the time to revisit the policy language and revise it to reflect a clear statement of purpose for the DEI policy. Some of the factors of concern in the initial language were that there was room for improvement in the definitive meaning. Policy language needs to clearly state its purpose, thus minimizing room for interpretation. It was also missing emphasis on what is fundamental to an educational institution, which is focused on academic excellence and achievement. In the statement calling for implementation of DEI standards from the Board of Regents, it states that strong DEI policies in partnership with parents and families empower students from all backgrounds to visualize success features for themselves and provide them with a sense of belonging and self-worth. These benefits can lead to improved student achievement, which can turn to better outcomes in the areas of their lives, including work and civic engagement. It further highlights 4 principles: welcoming and affirming environment, high expectation and rigorous instruction, inclusive curriculum and assessment, and ongoing professional learning, ensuring coherent opportunity for students to actively participate in experiences that prepare them for a lifetime of civic engagement, social justice activism, including, for example, completing capstone projects. Our Board of Education mission and district vision emphasizes high expectation, creative and critical thinking, a sense of belonging, and continuous improvement. The revised language provides a clear articulation of its purpose through well-defined core elements that are in line with the Board of Regents' definitions. The revised language also incorporates focus on academic excellence and achievement, We need to create an environment where every one of our children in the district feel that they are valued while providing with the best education possible to prepare them to take on the world that's ahead of them. I thank the board again for looking at this, revising the language. As a woman of color and someone who grew up without a lot of diversity and such, and had to live in a household where my parents didn't speak English, I was, second language. These kind of policies for inclusiveness are very important, but the emphasis on education and on excellence and achievement is equally important, because that drive was what led me to be able to be successful. It's a balance of the two, inclusiveness, equity, but also high achievement. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Christine, you want to come up?
Hello, I'm Christine Machayak. I'm at 55 Windsor Place. I'm here tonight to say also thank you for your work on revising the policy. The majority of the community spoke, and we wanted Ian and Michael to have their voice, so we appreciate the time. They are at the table with you, and we're happy that you gave the time to let them make the appropriate adjustments, and I think they're very well written. So thank you for that. I have 4 children that I will not enroll in the district until the district gets back to academic excellence and leaves the progressive politics to the side. So thank you for the revisions, and we look forward to a future board that continues to leave politics aside and focus on academic achievement for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne Case? Okay. Okay. Anybody else here for public comment? Okay. We'd love you guys to stay, because I think this is going to be informative. But, okay, now we're going to shift to our work session on a mental health update. Ms. Chung.
Turn it on. Sorry, thought you were just turning it on.
It was on.
Good evening. Sorry for the delay. Second. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to share with you tonight where we're in terms of meeting the needs of meeting the mental health needs of our students. The CDC defines mental health in childhood and throughout adolescence as attaining developmental and emotional milestones, learning healthy social skills and and coping with challenging situations. Mentally healthy children and youth have a positive quality of life and can function well at home, in school, and in their communities. I think we can all agree with that statement, and that is what we want for all of our children. I started teaching 26 years ago, and even though I was a high school math teacher, I knew that I wasn't there just to teach the math content. I knew that I needed to connect with my students, since we're all people first, and before we're teachers and students, and that they were not going to learn if they're not in the right frame of mind. Fast forward 22 years, in 2018, New York State had printed a comprehensive guide to mental health education literacy in schools, guiding schools to include mental health education into our program, K-12. Educators for decades have known that for learning to take place, students have to feel safe and connected. I think we can all agree that the children today are living in a much more complex and sophisticated world than the world that I think most of us, actually, except for maybe a couple of folks, most of us grew up in. And so we have to recognize the different needs that the current students have, and we need to meet them where they are. The students today are so different than when we were kids. 3 years ago, when we revised the strategic plan, we decided that one of the goals should be titled The Whole Child, because we recognize the importance of educating the whole child. Our goal was to establish a solid MTSS system in each school and also define what a healthy environment means to the Pelham school community. While the pandemic hijacked much of our time, the last 2 years, that we wanted to dedicate to the important work, but it is really important to highlight that while we've been talking about the pandemic for the last 2 years, the principals and the teachers did continue to work towards establishing a solid MTSS committee in each of the schools. And we also continue to work to identify the SEL curriculum that we felt was best suited for our students. In October, you learned about responsive classroom and how that supports our teachers in building a positive classroom community with engaging academics in our elementary schools. Tonight, you will learn about the mindful student lessons which our SEL teacher and psychologist, Ms. Nardone, has been delivering to all of the students in the 4 elementary schools. And Dr. Desoy is here to join us in discussing what the lessons teach our students and its impact. For secondary schools, which will go after that, in October, you learned about transition programs. Tonight, you're going to learn about the MTSS work that's been happening in the secondary schools and how we're addressing the mental health needs of our students. I want to point out that we still have a lot of work to do in this area. And addressing mental health and social emotional needs is so important, especially because of the pandemic. But I do want to remind people that the length of the school day has not changed. And so we are going to have to find creative ways to address both the academic and social emotional well-being of our students, and we will continue to work on that. But it has been challenging. It's one thing that I do want to say is if it's not built into the schedule, it is really hard to get implemented. And I think what's been successful in the elementary is that responsive classroom, like the morning meeting, that is part of the schedule. I think what we're doing this year with having the mindful student lessons being pushed into the classrooms, it works because it's built into the cycle. So you'll learn more about it. I'm not going to take away from the time. So I am going to introduce Ms. Nardone. You can start talking about it. Let me get the PowerPoint ready for you.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Anna Marie Nardone. I am a school psychologist here in Pelham. I am serving within all 4 elementary schools this year as the SEL teacher. So tonight I'm going to teach you about the social emotional learning curriculum that is being currently implemented within all 4 elementary schools. Oh. Okay. So first I want to outline an agenda of what I will be discussing tonight. First I'm going to go over what is social emotional learning, the Fly 5 curriculum called the Mindfulness Student, what does a lesson look like, what brain breaks are, rules, some of the CARES competencies which are being discussed within our lessons, discussions, we have a takeaway message, and then I have a mindfulness activity for everyone to participate in tonight. So some of you may be thinking, why is social emotional learning so important? SEL is an approach that assists students in recognizing their emotions and strategies for managing their emotions. To align with the district's goal of focusing on the whole child, SEL provides an emotional support to children within the classroom and promotes the use of these skills learned outside of the classroom, whether it's at home, while playing a sport, or even at the playground. So the curriculum that the district adopted is called Fly-5. It's through Responsive Classroom, and we're specifically on the mindful student. So the mindful student includes 20 grade-specific age-appropriate mindfulness lessons. Each lesson focuses on a CARES competency and grade-level skill. The mindfulness student is carefully designed to meet students where they are developmentally. The lessons offer students strategies for recognizing and imagining and managing these intense emotions. These strategies include body scans and visualizations, drawing and writing, and even partner and small group work. So within a lesson, I first cover the agenda so the students have a better understanding as to what's going to be covered throughout our lesson. We then start off with our brain break, we review our rules, we have a discussion, we cover one of the CARES competencies. I show a video in order to review some skills to show the students some modeling skills. We have activity, which is a partner and group work, our takeaway message, and then I end off our sessions with also a mindfulness activity. So brain breaks are incorporated at the beginning of each lesson to provide students with the opportunity to move around, release any energy that they may have, and to increase their attention throughout the lesson. Some of our brain breaks we've been utilizing prior to the start of each lesson are energizers, Go Noodles, videos, Simon Says, and even a version of 7-Up. After the activity, the students have the opportunity to reflect on what CARES competency skill they are utilizing within the brain break. At the beginning of each lesson, I review 3 key rules to the students, which are safe, respectful, and responsible. The reasoning behind the rule review is for the students not only to recognize these rules we follow in SEL or in school, but even outside of school. So these rules should be followed whether we're at home, on the playground, on the sports field, or even on play dates. So our first rule, safe. Our brain should be thinking about safety. There shouldn't be anything in our mouth, and our hands or feet should be to ourselves. The second rule is respectful, so our ears should be listening, our eyes should always be on the speaker. We're waiting to speak our turn. Our heart should be caring about what other people say, same way we want people to care about what we say, and personal space. And last but not least, responsible. So participating by raising our hand, cleaning up after ourselves after those fun activities, and doing all the work we're supposed to be doing. So the discussions provide students with an opportunity to reflect on their opinions, beliefs, and feelings about a specific topic or scenario. So within each lesson, students have the opportunity to share specific emotions correlated to each competency scenario given, or even a coping skill that we reviewed in class. Each classroom was provided this poster to utilize the poster outside of SEL. So during SEL, our primary focus is on the CARES competency. At the beginning of the year, CARES competencies were not only reviewed with our students, but as well as our families to ensure the continuum outside of school. Families are encouraged to speak about these competencies within their families. Prior to the beginning of each competency, a letter sent home to the families to inform them of what is being taught in school and ways to practice at home. So CARE stands for cooperation, how we're working with others, assertiveness, how we're speaking up for ourselves, responsibility, how we're following expectations, empathy, how to respect others and ourselves, and then self-control, how to control our own thoughts and behaviors. So we're now going to review the CARES competencies. Under each competency, there are standards that the curriculum follows. Each standard is narrowed down into specific goals that are developmentally appropriate for each grade. So under cooperation, we review able to make and keep friends, working with others towards a common goal, resolving differences quickly, cooperating as a group leader or a member of a group, and exhibiting helpfulness. Next is assertiveness, so expressing strong emotions and opinions effectively, able to seek help, shows openness and honesty, persists through challenging events, takes the initiative to do what is right and fair, and makes choices one feels good about later. Responsibility, selects the best option among choices for suitable outcome, holds self accountable, demonstrates social, civic, digital responsibility, and takes care of property. Empathy, recognizing and mandates one's own emotions and recognizing the emotions of others, respects and values diversity in others, respects differing cultural norms and aware of the impact of one's actions on others. Then lastly, self-control. So adhering to social, behavioral, and moral standards, managing overwhelming thoughts and emotions, controlling impulses and delays of gratification, and showing hope and perseverance. So since the curriculum adopted was too complex for our students in special education classrooms, I've modified the lessons for the students. Within my lessons, I'm covering basic emotions such as happiness, sadness, and anger. With the students, we're explaining what these emotions may look like, what happens to our bodies when we experience these emotions, and coping strategies for when we do experience these emotions. The lessons include visuals, videos, books, and songs. And a classroom assessment is completed at the end of each session to assure the students able to distinguish the difference between each emotion learned. Up next, I have our mindfulness activity. So mindfulness is a practice of paying attention to the present moment. It gives us the opportunity to acknowledge and accept our feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations without judgment. We practice mindfulness to feel calmer, to get to know ourselves better, and to strengthen our resilience. For today's mindfulness activity, we'll be remembering joy. Okay. Recalling happy memories reduces stress and builds resilience. Given an inherent negativity bias that we're constantly flooded with upsetting events on the news, it's especially important to carve out time for positivity daily. In today's activity, we'll travel back in time through our minds to relive a moment that brought us joy. So I invite everybody to sit in a comfortable position. You can have your feet flat on the floor, your hands in your lap. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Take a moment to recall a happy memory. Don't worry about picking the perfect memory. Whatever comes to mind first will work well for this exercise, as long as it evokes joy. Travel back in time to where the memory took place. Visualize yourself there. What did it look like? Take a moment to look around your mind and remember your surroundings. Who else was there? Remember their faces and the way it felt to be with them. If it was just you, remember what felt good about spending time on your own. Open all of your senses. Remember the sounds. What did you touch? How did it feel? What did it smell like? What could you taste? Take the next couple of minutes to soak in your memory. Lean into it. Imagine you're right there, right now. Feel it completely. Gently bring yourself back to the present moment. Wiggle your fingers and toes, and when you're ready, open your eyes. Notice any of your feelings that arose during your journey back in time that are still here. Welcome these good feelings to stay for a while, and when they naturally drift away, thank them for visiting. So some of the reflection questions I have for you guys is, how did it feel to travel back in time? And do you feel grateful for anything from that moment?
Are we supposed to answer?
You can answer, as long as you're comfortable.
Well, I'll start. What am I supposed to, what am I remembering?
So how did it feel to travel back in time?
It felt great. I was so much younger then.
And is there anything grateful that you're from that moment?
It was just an experience that I'll never have again, and it was just wonderful to think about it again.
That's great. Anybody else want to share?
I think just taking the time to close my eyes and just focus on something that, to use your phrase, isn't negative for a moment, and free up my mind for a moment. I could feel my body just relaxing. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I also noticed I feel more focused after kind of coming back from my joyful place. I do, calm and also more mentally focused too.
I was surprised, it doesn't answer your question specifically, but I was surprised as my mind was already going to all the things that you were asking us. I had already kind of scanned the room in my brain, so brought it right back.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So our takeaway message for today is when students feel safe and supported, they're truly ready, able to learn. Anybody have any questions?
How often do you do this with a class?
So I am at each school, I would say every 2 weeks. So at every 3 days, I'm cycling to a different school.
Oh, so you spend 3 days at a school and then you, okay.
Correct.
And so how many classes? Do you get through all the classes in the school?
I
in
do
that 3
K
days?
through 5 plus special ed.
Oh, that's a lot.
And it's during library, correct?
So the weeks that I'm not there, library's taking over.
Okay,
So it's flip-flops.
I got you. And the curriculum, I mean, the lessons that you do all are guided by these principles, but I'm assuming that they're different, like, you do different things with kindergartners than a fifth grader.
Yes, so it
Yeah.
fits each grade developmentally where they are. For example, we're talking about assertiveness. So with assertiveness, with kindergartners, we're talking about really identifying our feelings first, whereas fifth graders, we're already thinking about expressing our opinions without judgment. So that's how different it could be.
Well, I'll say that I have a kindergartner who came home the other day, and now I understand why he said, "Would you rather have me be respectful or responsible?" And I was like, well, that's a tough one because I want you to be both, but I guess I'd want you to be respectful first, and then I'll deal with responsibility. And then I saw these slides, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's learning, and they talk about you a lot, so thank you.
Of course, of course.
You got set up.
You teed me up, for this meeting.
Sorry.
So I think you may have answered this. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, no, Sue, please.
But so when you're not there, there are kind of leave behinds for the librarian or for teachers or, you know, for ways to kind of keep this going in between the cycle?
So I post my slides on Google Classroom. The teachers have access to it, so if they ever want to continue outside of what I'm teaching. Also, teachers are free to consult with me, so a lot of teachers end up reaching out, asking if they need any assistance, what they could do. And also, I get a lot of feedback from teachers, so if the students need to focus on a specific skill, I make sure to hear from the teachers first before I implement the lesson, so I'm able to include those skills in there.
Thank you.
And since you said you rotate through all the schools every 3 weeks or so, have you seen a difference from the beginning of the year until now in terms of how they respond to you, just their demeanor, the
So it's funny
children
that you bring that
at
up.
every age group?
It's
Okay,
funny that
sorry.
you bring that up. So when we were reviewing cooperation, I was assured to do a lot of lunch duty to make sure like the things being taught is being followed through. So one of the big things through cooperation was compromising. So we saw a lot of compromising during recess, and a lot of students would come back to me and say, "Oh, Miss Nardone, I compromised today with my sibling." So it's nice to hear some stories too.
And from like the teachers and from the principal side, since we don't have the teachers here tonight, do teachers report a difference in the classroom having this curriculum?
So one of the greatest feedbacks that we get from our teachers is that Anna Marie does a feelings check-in in the beginning of the lessons, and she leaves those feelings check-ins with the teachers. And so the teachers now are, like, they kind of go through it, and they're aware of like where the students are and how they're feeling so that they can address it for the rest of the week and be kind of mindful of, you know, who's feeling a certain way. Who's feeling a certain way and kind of just keep their eye out on that. So I think that that's definitely a connection between Anna Marie and the teachers that they are really appreciative of. It's just one thing off the top of my head that I know that our teachers are really grateful for, and they definitely follow through with.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing, sorry, here you go. I got it. The nice thing is that, you know, she's gotten to know so many of the teachers, and she really, she's helped us tremendously, even with our fifth grade. So we noticed a need in fifth grade with, you know, some cliques being formed, and we wanted to address it. And with Dr. DeSoy and Anna, we really worked with the fifth grade on creating lessons. We did joint morning meetings where they led it, and they focused on teaching children the difference between cliques, friendship groups, and clubs, and really had them talk about how they felt and why, you know, a clique might feel good, but what's the other side of that, and how do you feel when you're not in that clique? And she's really tailored the lessons to the needs of our 5th grade group, and I know she does that for most of the schools. So that's been something that's really been helpful as well.
I would just say, I was on the wellness committee with many of you, and pre-pandemic, there was a real need for this explicit instruction in social skills and emotion regulation and attention, and we just didn't know how to incorporate it. And I really tried to be the liaison between the teachers and the wellness committee to say, teachers are looking for this. They're looking for strategies. So while teachers don't have to stay in the classroom, many of them do. And they consult with Anna, and we've had a lot of positive feedback from kids who say, I can't believe, one child came up to me the other day and said, I'm so glad we have this class, and people realize that getting along is just as important as math. And so explicitly teaching the vocabulary is really important. We've also had kids create writing lessons in 5th grade using SEL lessons, so it's perspective taking and writing narratives. So I think it all intertwines, and I'm really happy that, I know given this crisis it was difficult, but it was an opportunity to incorporate this. It's wonderful. And it, as a psychologist,
I would just echo what Sarah's saying. So our kids are coming off a pandemic, right? And adults, quite frankly, are coming off a pandemic, and they don't always have the language to express how they're feeling. And what Ms. Nardone has been able to do is give the language to say, this is how I'm feeling, I don't know how to handle it, or I do know, or this is the strategy I'm going to use. And I think it's been very beneficial to start those conversations. Yeah. And it also dovetails really nicely with responsive classroom. So I know she went through the CARES, the guidelines, but that's really what responsive classroom is built on. And so the teachers that were trained in responsive classroom have already built that foundation, and what Ms. Nardone has been able to do is build off of that and really help support the children through that.
So we did hear that this high five is the direct instruction piece of responsive classroom. So just understand that it's the same concepts that are part of responsive classroom, but this is where you're actually teaching it.
So Fly 5 is through responsive classroom. So it piggybacks off a lot of things that are already being utilized within the classrooms, especially in morning meeting. So I'm carrying over also into SEL.
The other thing I've noticed on the parent side of it is the letter goes home to the parents, so it tells, I've noticed maybe my older kid isn't bringing it home. I'm just really learning more from my kindergartner than my older one. But, and so it gives parents the language that's being used, and I guess we have access to Google Classroom as well, so you can, the teachers have access to it, but I guess there's things you can be doing at home as well.
Yeah, so in the letter I include what we're specifically talking about and then ways families could practice at home, whether it's helping out or bringing in the groceries or talking, even having an open conversation about times you've had to cooperate, times you've had to be assertive. Just learning and modeling with your child really helps too.
And Anna's really made herself available to parents, I have to say. A lot of parents have reached out to her for specific help, and you know, it's helpful. As a psychologist, she's been really supportive with parents. I've had positive feedback there too.
I'm asking a question, it's probably a stupid question, but it just occurs to me. Is there any assessment or measurement of the impact of this type of, you guys are looking at each other like,
well,
who is this guy?
No, we talked
That's a good
about that,
question. Yeah.
so.
You want to go ahead?
So it is a very good question. As of right now, we don't have assessment, but we were thinking about creating a survey for not only students, but also families to reach out and give us their input in regards to the curriculum being taught and what they enjoyed from it.
Be interesting to see that.
I also imagine that with MTSS, that I know a lot of times, I mean, we have widened the umbrella so it encompasses academic and emotional to address the fact that sometimes the academic needs are actually driven by emotional needs, right? But I imagine that you maybe have less need to, like less students being reported to MTSS. Or maybe eventually.
Right. So right now,
Ideally.
tier 2, tier 3, and mandated students are seen by the psychologist of the school. And now we have the opportunity, and I've seen it through students who have been referred for Tier 2, they really have Tier 1 in place. They know the skills, they've talked about the skills, and they're independent in most of them. So we can really we have an opportunity to measure it. Now that we have the skills, we can really measure it. I think this is the pilot part and collecting the data next. Yeah.
I do want to thank you for allowing us to hire an extra psychologist this year so that we can implement this, because it's a lot to try to have the existing personnel try to do the push-in to provide this type of lessons. So I do want to thank you for that, and hopefully we can continue.
Well,
Just a
also,
little plug there.
but the other plug is for the individual, like it's about the role, but then it's about the person in the role. And I mean, as I said, you're a popular person in my house, but I might be biased, but it's like the FLES program was successful because we had great FLES teachers, and right, you have to have the right people. The teachers, glom on to the right people as they come into their classroom. They don't mind having an individual come into their classroom and take away instruction time, So.
I'm wondering, is there any other component to the responsive classroom, high five?
Fly
five. That we're missing, or is this the entire program?
Well, in terms of responsive classroom training, we had 3 cohorts go through it. We do have another cohort, so not all of our teachers have been trained yet. So we need to continue that next year. And the other part of it is, it's not just, we don't want it to be just a one and done kind of training, even though it is 4 days long. So we did have the consultant come back and consult with the first 2 cohorts. And so 2 weeks ago, I had the consultant come back and then kind of stayed, and he went to each school for a full day to kind of do some observation and give them feedback, and I think that was helpful. Do you want to?
For some of the classrooms, he started to talk about closing circle. So classrooms where morning meeting is up and running, he started to introduce the closing circle and how to end the day in a positive way, with having students reflect on how they felt about their day academically, but also the social emotional piece and anything they want to look forward to the next day. So that was really powerful. He also talked a lot about the language and reinforced the importance of language and the use of inclusive language within the classroom. So that was reaffirming to teachers. I don't know if he did anything else in your building. It was great. It was really, it was very positive. I think that piece of it was so important because we were coming off a time where some of the cohorts were first trained, and then we went into COVID mode, and so a lot of our communication with teachers was so focused on COVID, and I think this brought them back to the training and just sort of reaffirmed some of the things that they know they wanted to put in place and needed just some feedback on. So it was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Great.
You as
Great
well.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. so-
Secondary.
Yep, we'll
Thank you very much, elementary folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Really great. Appreciate everything you did preparing for the.
Sure. Yeah. One of those what?
An SEL psychologist.
You never miss an opportunity, Miss Sabia.
It's so subtle.
So subtle.
So subtle.
That's the athlete
Don't
in me.
even see it coming.
You just don't even see it coming.
I haven't seen it in a while.
the clicker's over there.
Amy did such a good job to be like in her first year in the district and take that on. She's very confident. Yes. Yeah. I was very impressed with Amy.
Yeah.
You know? So something that I do want to point out is, I think initially we talked about having this K-12 continuum where we wanted to find a program that would go from K to 12. But, as we're looking at different programs, if you really think about it, there really aren't a program that fits K through 12 students because developmentally the needs are so different. So I know that one of the popular programs out there is Ruler. Well, Ruler, if you start from K and then you go up, and it'll take 12 years to get there, but if you go up and you get really involved in that particular program, I think it might be successful. But for us to just try to teach students that program to identify their emotions to high school kids, that wouldn't work. High school kids are already way past that. And so I think what we found is that responsive classroom is something that I know Tricia had talked about, and then we brought it in 3 years ago. It's been working beautifully, and that's part of the reason why we looked for a curriculum that worked with responsive classroom. So I think that's working great. I think middle and high school, responsive classroom really doesn't go all the way up to high school, but we did talk about Steps A, which they are going to talk about tonight. That is a very specific curriculum that we are still trying to implement, and we'll talk about some of the challenges. But I do want to point out that 3 years ago we had great plans, and I think as we are, and I know one of the things that Judy wanted us to think about is come back every year and a half, I think it was, to really look at how you need to revise, because as you're working on something, you are going to have to make revisions throughout, the 5-year plan. And I think that's kind of what we've been trying to do to figure out what really fits and what makes sense. So we'll talk about what middle school is doing, and then high school, and then we'll answer your questions. Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
So, hi, everybody. We thought for the secondary level, the best way to frame this conversation was what Ms. DiDomenico just spoke about, which is the MTSS model, right? So a lot of people are probably familiar with the instructional piece of the model, which is if you can see the left, is the academic piece. On the right, it also fits, it's the behavioral piece. So tonight we're speaking about social, emotional, and the tiers of intervention in that way. So when we're having our conversations tonight, we're going to talk about the tier 1 pieces, which happen at the middle school level as well as the high school level. Things that Ms. Sabia is running as far as a little bit different than as far as the academics pieces go, because the pieces that happen for the tier 1 intervention, social emotionally, we're having conversations about what happens in the classroom, things that the frontline things that teachers might be implementing as far as perhaps working with the students directly on a daily basis, maybe reaching out to the parents. Those are all tier 1 interventions. Other tier 1 interventions are things that happen by grade level. It could be push-ins to classrooms that happen consistently to a grade level that happens across the board, or it could be something that's school-wide, an assembly. So Ms. Sabia and Mr. Berkowitz is going to speak about those interventions too. We had the opportunity, actually even today, to meet with Mr. Wright, Jim Wright, to do a continued training to roll out and work on this MTSS model and to refine it. So it's well refined as far as the standing meeting goes at the middle school level, because there's a standing team meeting that happens every day. And at the high school level, we're making really exciting progress and building some good bones with the process too. Can you hear me? Am I loud? Sorry. Okay.
You gotta say that all again.
Good progress at the high school. We're all set at the middle school.
Good progress. So we're really excited about the work that's going on here. We worked on things such as process. We're working about the referral process specifically at the high school, and also at the middle school level. It's more entrenched because the system, the players on the NTSS committee are there. So there are teachers there. There are social workers, psychologists, of course, Ms. Sabia, whoever needs to be there, counselors as well too. I think I wanted to speak to this because the tiers, and we'll go into the specifics because we've outlined the interventions that are in place for you guys to look at a little bit also. But the second tier of interventions are targeted interventions. So things like groups. So at the middle school level, there's things like newcomer groups. There are certain social emotional groups that the psychologists run. They've had a chance to observe, which are really terrific. And then also at the high school level, there's similar interventions too. The top tier just to review a little bit, that top tier are things that are very, very specific. Ms. Quintana to my left, she is able to do facilitate wraparound meetings. Also at the middle school level too, they have wraparound meetings, BIPs, other things like that that are very specific that the counselors or psychologists or actually social workers, psychologists are providing on a one-to-one basis. So that is the top tier. So our charge with the MTSS model is really to work through these processes so that we're putting students in appropriate places and giving the appropriate services. So we thought this was a good place to start with the MTSS model as far as framing out, looking at what gaps we may or may not have and seeing what pieces to the puzzle that we need to fit to really serve the students 6-12. So I kick it off, so I want to turn the show over to Ms. Sabia, and she's going to talk about her Tier 1 interventions going on at the middle school.
Yes, thank you.
Can we just get the next slide? I'm not sure if it's,
Yeah.
and then after that.
over there? No, you could do, yeah.
And then I guess again, because we're missing half of this. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So it's funny, we always want to grow and learn, and listening to this SEL lesson from the elementary school, Sharon came over to me and said, oh, there's a lot of these things that I can do with our 6th graders as they're transitioning with the 5th grade, some of the same language. So we think, well, that stuff is really good and it all builds on each other. And Julia's the one that really helped us form our MTSS teams. We had all different teams in the middle school. And so we had to have it really under one umbrella so we can work more efficiently. And thank you to Julia for doing that. As Jean said, there's Tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions. And if you look on the left side, we have a lot of different Tier 1 interventions. Our climate surveys, which Mr. Lowell will speak about later, give you more information. Our core instruction, our classroom lessons by Sharon Charles, she'll talk about that. Our team meetings, which is critical to the middle school. Teaming is a systematic approach to deliver supports to our students. And we have 2 teams of core teachers, and they work together to plan, develop curriculum, meet regularly to help support students socially and emotionally as well. Effective interdisciplinary teams lead to more student production, increased parental contact. We do team meetings 4 to 6 days in the cycle, so all our teachers meet. They meet with our guidance counselors, they meet with our psychologists, and then we meet with the parents as well. It enhances the social climate, and it gives a more positive attitude and feeling for the teachers, for the students, and they'll have great discussions. What one teacher, what works for one student with one teacher may not work with another teacher, so they talk about different strategies. So that's critical to our middle school development. Also, we work PBIS, which is Positive Intervention Support Services, and that's a systematic approach to promote positive behaviors. And the purpose of PBIS is to establish a climate in which appropriate behavior is the norm. So those are things we work on. We have different behavioral strategies that we do across all grade levels. We have our sexual awareness and prevention, which is the good touches, bad touches, that our psychologists go into the classrooms and work with all the students. We have consultation with our team, our support staff, the school counselors, our grade level assemblies where we meet with each grade level and we talk about things that are pertinent to what's happening with that grade level, whether it be out at recess, in the cafeteria, in the classroom, in the hallway. Differentiated instruction, our transition and orientation planning, which you heard about in October, our health science classes, we monitor our grades, we monitor attendance. So those are all Tier 1 interventions that happen for the entire school. And we're going to talk a little bit about Tier 2 and 3. So our pupil personnel meeting, we have our psychologist and our social worker that meet and talk about students that may be in higher need, that may be struggling a little bit more. We do our grade level student groups that are run by the psychologists. We have student groups that are run by Sharon, and she'll talk about that a little bit later. We do positive reinforcement plans, behavior modification plans, social emotional coaching from our counselors. We work with the outside providers and our agencies to support the families. We have DBT groups, which is dialectical behavior therapy. That's a therapy that tries to identify and change negative patterns and pushes positive behavioral changes. It combines strategies like mindfulness and acceptance, and we do groups with that as well. Our psychologists work as the case managers for all the wraparound services. Building level counseling that the psychologists do, that the social workers do, behavior assessment, behavior plans, mandated counseling, new student orientation. We work with the homeless students, wellness. We have our extended academy, which is sponsored by our civics, that works with our struggling students that need the most support. That's run after school, taught by our own teachers. So those are more tier 2 and tier 3 that are available for the students that really need those extra supports.
Have the next slide, please. Thank you. So, when we began working with When we began working with Character.org and preparing for our application to be first a state and then a National School of Character, one of the issues that we realized is we didn't have a ton of quantitative data from year to year on school climate. We had pretty good discipline data. We've since then really improved. I'm collecting discipline data at a super granular level, but we really couldn't say from year to year, besides anecdotally, how the climate of the school was improving or not. So starting last fall, we developed and then administered a climate survey to all students. And then we repeated that process this fall, asking questions like, and this is, you answer on a continuum from strongly agree to strongly disagree. I take pride in the appearance of my school. Students are safe at this school. Students at the school are well behaved. Students respect their teachers at the school. Teachers at the school genuinely care about their students. Students at the school respect each other's differences, etc. And, in about 15 questions or so, in just a few minutes, we're really able to collect some very useful data. So that's something that we're going to be continuing from year to year. The whole process of becoming a school of character was really very helpful and meaningful for us in terms of focusing on the specific aspects of our practice that directly related to character. And even though we received that designation last year, the relationship continues. So there is a national forum that takes place each year. There are workshops. There are meetings. I have one just next week with other school leaders of schools of character. And they actually enlist us to evaluate other schools and districts. I had the bad luck to get a school in Texas that was not doing a particularly good job in terms of their application. I felt really bad because this was my first time evaluating, so I had a lot of contact with the person who's in charge nationally to say, listen, can you look over my scores? I feel bad. They've done a lot of work, but they have very, very specific rubrics, and when you go through those rubrics, I was saying to Ms. Sabia, the process took me almost as long as it did to apply as our own school. They just weren't making it. But it's a relationship that will continue for the next 5 years and is very meaningful for us. This year, we were very excited to bring Rosalind Wiseman back. She has her organization that's called Cultures of Dignity. She's, of course, the famous author of books like Masterminds and Wingmen and Queen Bees and Wannabes. And we had a whole process leading up to this couple of days that she was actually here in the building. So this was done in collaboration with Pelham Together and was through a grant from the Pelham Education Foundation. Rosalind and her colleagues at Cultures of Dignity started out over Google Meet with a series of meetings with our leadership and our staff, and then focus groups with a group of students from each grade and a group of student ambassadors, where she really tried to drill down with the kids what they felt the issues were in their school and what they felt that she could do and she could bring to the table to help. When she actually came from the West Coast to visit us, there was a faculty training with our entire staff. There was a grade level assembly with the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, so that's over 200 kids at each grade, which was real interesting to pull off, especially in COVID, but we were able to do that safely. And then she had a meeting with the student ambassadors. And the idea of the student ambassador program that started when Rosalind first came to the school, I want to say 3 years ago, Ms. Sabia, is that each year we're going to train a cohort of students who are going to be student leaders that are going to help bring positive character practices that they learn to their classmates. If you could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We are in the really 6th year as a IB World School offering the middle years program. And as such, we are deeply involved in the process of preparing for revisit, which is when folks from the IB visit the school to, just as they did when we first applied to become authorized as an IB World School, really to see how we're doing and to see how we've progressed since then. So, you know, as in every other area, there was some deviation from our goals due to COVID, where we couldn't focus in the past 2 years as much on middle years program as we would have liked to. But there are a lot of areas, I think, that really relate to student social and emotional wellness. Part of that is the focus each day in school and in classes on the IB learner profile, striving to be not only inquirers and knowledgeable, which we associate with academics, but to be principled, to be open-minded, to be caring, to be balanced, etc. Service and action throughout the program, which is where students focus on a mindset of, you know, if I'm learning a skill, if I'm learning content in school, how will I be able to apply that either now or in my future to help make the world a better place? And that leads often to grade level or class experiences relating to serving others in the community. And the community project, which, you know, I still feel is one of the most meaningful aspects of our IB implementation. And we're already deep into IB community project time, where students are making appointments, often with Ms. Sabia and I, because they need permission to do some of these very ambitious projects that will be happening in the community, maybe involving the elementary schools, etc. And the kids always surprise us with how passionate they are about various issues and how much work they're willing to put in. And, you know, in terms of student social and emotional wellness too, seeing how engaged they become, seeing how energized they become when they're working on these projects. You know, one of the things that we really want as human beings to feel good about ourselves is to feel that we have a purpose. And I think, you know, living through the past couple of years, I think, you know, some hopelessness has set in for the kids, sometimes for us as adults, where we don't really feel like we're able to make the difference that we want to make. And, you know, for our students, when we empower them to feel that they can make a positive change in a world that sometimes feels like it's spiraling out of control, I think that goes a long way towards making them feel, you know, very good about being themselves and being here in school. On another note, just in terms of trying to preserve the middle school experience, you know, I often think when I look back on 7th grade, 8th grade, some of my own most meaningful experiences had to do with when we deviated from the regular classroom experience. So getting to go on an 8th grade trip, getting to have, you know, really cool assembly or speaker come into the building. And this has been hard. You know, we've had to cancel all of the normal trips that we do. But our teachers have been working really hard, and some of our administrators, to still bring that enrichment to students. We have set up for our 7th graders to relate to student study of A Long Walk for Water. They're going to have a virtual session with one of the lost boys of Sudan. For our, all of our students, right, tomorrow, we have a very noted artist, a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient, Joyce J. Scott, is going to be meeting with all of our students virtually. For our 6th graders, we're bringing in author Emma Otegi. She's also going to be meeting with our ENL students as a former ENL student herself, I believe. 8th graders, we had a session with the Tenement Museum. They couldn't go in person, so we brought an expert from the Tenement Museum to provide a program for them. and a lot of great stuff through our studio and art class. There's an ongoing careers in art speaker series. I believe they do at least 4 or 5 times, where noted artists from the community come in to work with the students, and we got to do a museum tour as well. I can't wait till I can actually be going out with the kids on real trips to real places, but in the meantime, we're trying to not make this feel like a slog for them. Because in reality, when we think about school, sometimes the most exciting thing was the field day, was the trip to the Museum of Natural History, was getting to go on a ski trip, and it's just sad that our kids have missed out on so much of this. We've been a No Place for Hate school with Gold Star status for the last 2 years. We're really trying to step it up, continuing to have 4 activities implemented each year, which is coordinated with our SWAT team, or a school-wide activities team, with faculty and staff members. We actually also have, we lost it. I put the computer to sleep, I talk so much.
We're not asleep.
We have Shauna Goldstein, who's actually a leave replacement teacher this year. She's been doing a fantastic job helping moderate that. And we want to have a model where we do have a faculty moderator so that it's not all me. This year, Sharon Charles got involved in the No Place for Hate process, particularly in the initial signing of the pledge. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon, who'll talk a little bit about that.
So hi, everyone. It's nice to see you.
Does that work now? So hi, everyone. When I was just thinking of doing this, I don't even know if I've been here 15 or 16 years. I couldn't even remember, but I've been here a long time, and so I know a lot of people, and the programs that I've done have kind of changed a little over the years. But to talk just a moment about when Rosalind Wiseman came, we decided that we would kind of to reiterate some of the things she spoke about at the grade level, that I went into every classroom in all grades and kind of did a grade appropriate review of some of the tenets she said about dignity and boundaries and friendships and just certain behaviors that we always ask of our students. And I did it based on the questions that they had, some of the work that they did in those assemblies, and they went really well. And then with the ambassadors, there are about 22 kids in 7 or 8 in each grade, and we decided to do a campaign, and even during COVID, we were able to do it. We met a few times in large spaces. The kids came up with the campaign. We decided to kind of like piggyback on No Place for Hate with Rosalind Wiseman, and we did I Will Not Spread Hate. So the kids then signed a pledge. We also had, I actually put it over there, a jar of good deeds, basket of inspirations. We drew on the kids' hands. We did ribbons, like I used to in the old days with, when I did campaigns, and Hershey Kisses, and all kind of just, the kids were so excited. We picked a beautiful day in December. Thank goodness we did it in the courtyard. You can see right there. And the kids, some of your kids, I think, were involved as ambassadors and just doing it. And the kids really loved it. They got excited. They understood what the meaning was. We had them sign, I will not gossip. I will not, so many different things. So that was really a great thing. And they all want to do another one in the spring. So we're going to do another event in the spring. And just going to what I've been doing, I am now only working really half-time pretty much because of a number of reasons the last 2 or 3 years. But I've always done programs and push into the classroom for the past 15 years. And really, I tell kids from 6th grade, and I really do a layered approach from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. It's really, my overall theme is healthy relationships through healthy communication, finding non-aggressive ways to make your needs met. And that's kind of like what I talk about throughout all grades. 6th grade, I do 2 or 3 lessons in every class I push in. I talk about respect. I talk about honoring differences. I talk about, depending on some of the things, like next year I'll go off of some of the things like Anna Marie's doing. And I'll talk about those things. I ask the kids a lot of questions, what it's like for you, what you're doing. And we kind of have a dialogue, and the kids get to know me, so then they will self-refer to me at other times, which is one way. COVID's been a little hard. 7th grade is where I do the bulk of my work. I go in every single month to technology. So the kids see me probably about 9 times. And I do a curriculum that I've honed over the years, but it's pretty much, it's on interpersonal violence, blaming, victim blaming, trauma, it's coping skills, safety strategies, responsible bystander, mindfulness, communication, empowerment, power and control, just really with, again, healthy communication leading to healthy relationships. And then in 8th grade, I go in once just to kind of, whatever's going on, and the teachers will tell me this is what kind of some of the things, and I go in the fall. And then in health class, I do 3 sessions with every student who has health. I do dating, healthy relationships and dating abuse, dating violence, the warning signs, what is it, what should you be aware of, what is a healthy relationship, what is abusive, what is power and control. So, and I tell, we often talk about real life stories and current events and things, and they get an opportunity to know me and do a lot of self-referral. I do groups, historically I've done like 4 groups. I do boys groups, girls groups, peer leadership. Now I'll do the student ambassador, and I have lunch groups, but I will go back to doing some more as COVID, eases a little bit, so.
Thank you. If we could go to the next slide. So one of Mr. Llewellyn, my overarching goal is to really bring back as much joy as we can and get the kids involved and engaged and doing as much as we can. So we talked about the DBT, the psychologist groups, the MTSS, the team meetings. So we've brought field trips to us. We've worked with Mountain Workshop, and they did a 7th grade team building day. We did it early in the year so the students can kind of get to know each other. And they had to problem solve and work, and it was absolutely great. The kids loved it. Our 8th grade teachers created the same type of workshop for the 8th graders, and we ran that a full day. And that's how we actually started out our faculty meeting. We did, Mountain Workshop came to the school to work with the faculty. So we started out our faculty meeting with a team building activity, and it was great because it was outside, and it was the first time I saw in person some of the people we hired through Google Meets. It was the first time I got to see some people without masks on because we were outside. And, I always think of the saying, if you're in an airplane, put the gas mask, on the child so that, you can make sure that put the gas mask on yourself so you can help make sure you take care of your child. And I always would think about that. The oxygen mask, yeah. Oh. I need a brain break.
We knew exactly.
Can I have a
what you were
brain
talking
break
about.
right now? Let me start
We
that
knew.
over. Okay. Wow. Okay, I'm going to go to my mindful place for a second. Okay. So when you're on an airplane, the stewardess gets on and says, please put the oxygen mask on yourself first and not the child. And I remember when I was traveling with my niece who was 2, I was like, there is no way that's going on her. But it makes sense, right? You're not going to be able to help anybody. And if our faculty is not where they need to be, we're very conscious of their social emotional well-being. So we started out our faculty meeting like that. During the school year, we do activities with our faculty. We bring them together because that's important too, because they're leading our students, so they have to be in a place where they feel that they can do that. Some of the clubs, we have a myriad of clubs. We've got probably about 25 clubs. If a student comes up with an idea and we don't have that club, we get that club. The teachers will volunteer to do it. But some of the more social and emotional pointed clubs, our GSA, our Gender and Sexuality Alliance, is a huge club now. There's probably like 35 members in it. They meet weekly, and they feel like they have a place, and their allies have a place where they can go. We have our ACE Club, Access Creates Equity, and that's for students that really want to have more voice and agency. And one of the plans they're coming up with, and I'll be coming to you, Dr. Champ, the students feel that it's not fair that they don't get to wear hats in the middle school. You get to wear hats in the high school. So does it suddenly become disrespectful in the middle school, but it's not disrespectful in the high school? So we had a whole presentation, and now we're going to bring our team leaders, teacher team leaders in, and they're going to present to us and come to you because they really would like to see a change. So
We want our students to be agents for change, so. you know.
exactly. I'm for it, kind of, I think. And then our Common Sense Project. That's a group run by students that come up with their own projects, and they do, secret acts of kindness or anonymous acts of kindness, and they're a real good group together. Our game club on Friday afternoons is another huge club. Mr. Brown runs that, and it's one of the biggest social clubs we've ever had. So originally it was all different games. Now it's just the whole big social thing, which the kids love, and it's great. Another one I didn't add on there, Youth to Youth, and they work with our community, and it's really a service-oriented group.
Thought of another one. Our Pelham Together and our Project Esperanza.
Yes.
Pelham Together Spanish Club.
Yes.
Which is a service to help feed hungry in the community.
Yep. So we're doing a lot of different things there as well. And then the last slide. So talk about bringing back joy. So we've had some really fun things. So we've had our Spirit Weeks. We've had 2 Spirit Weeks already. And then we've had our Halloween costume contest, where those are some of our contestants. We have our ugly sweater contest during the holiday. And we have winners, and those winners get prizes, and it's been a lot of fun. We share a great partnership with Pelham Together. We do the Hop Junior Award, which is the Heart of Pelham. The high school does the Heart of Pelham Award. We do the Heart of Pelham Junior Award, and the students get recognized for that. And another thing that we're starting in working with Pelham Together, we're doing more social activities for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So we did a survey to all our students. What are your top activities you want to do? Do you want to do them by grade level? Do you want to do a mixed grade? We got all that information, and now Pelham Together, PTAs, and the parents are volunteering to put these things together for students to go to on Friday and Saturday nights. I said I'd be happy to volunteer and go, but I don't know that the kids would want me there. So I think they'd have more fun not worrying about me being there. So the parents have graciously volunteered to run those. And we have a new partnership. I mean, we've always partnered with our police departments, but a new partnership that Sergeant Hendry has started. Because so many of our students missed out on DARE, they're going to be coming in, working with the high school students and coming into the middle school and teaching 6th and 7th grade lessons. And they got topics from our students, what they really want the police to come in and talk to them about and teach them. So we're going to be working on that, and I think that's going to be a really good partnership moving forward. And then we're going to do, when the weather gets nicer, they're going to come with their fly car, their ambulance, their K-9 unit, the fire department, bring the cars right up on the field and let the kids go and play on the trucks and kind of get to see them and know them, and so they'll be all excited about that. So those are just some of the things that we're doing.
It's hard not to get excited about what's going on at the middle school after hearing your enthusiasm and excitement, so thank you.
Well, thank you. I need a brain break after.
No gas
I'm never going to
mask.
live this down. To myself.
Do not use
to
a gas
myself.
mask, please.
Everyone could have made that gas mask mistake.
Oh, my gosh, I can't believe it.
Well, the best part about collaborating with the middle school is that the kids come in with so many skills already. So again, super grateful for Ms. Sabia, Mr. Llewellyn, Ms. Charles, and the presentation also from our K-5 colleagues, Mr. Farrell, Ms. Quintano. So as Mr. Farrell said, our whole school district has been working obviously on MTSS, and the Tier 1s and Tier 2, Tier 3 supports are very, very much important for us as well. I actually can't look at it and look back, so just let me open it. That's perfect. So we too had started student wellness surveys. Very important, as Mr. Llewellyn said, talking about having the information that gives us a critical understanding about where students are in a given year, and doing it once a year, if not twice, can be incredibly helpful. Universal DBT, Ms. Quintana will talk about DBT, but again, helping students not just with either or, but the and statement of, allowing our students to kind of understand where they are and also where they might want to be or need to be in managing and experiencing a range of student emotions and feelings and how to problem solve. Core instruction, as Mr. Farrell's talking about, core instructional practices are very much important. That's the tier 1 for everyone, and we'll be continuing to talk about ways in which we can provide training to all of our faculty in some of these practices. Freshman transition program that we talked about during the wellness orientation, we'll talk a little bit more about, just a recap slide that has happened. We're the beneficiary across the secondary campus of having an SAS counselor, essentially a substance abuse prevention counselor. Ms. Ladisa joined us in October, right around the time of Chris Herron. And she has done some push-ins to our 10th grade health classes, as well as doing some individual counseling from self-referral or from referral from the counseling office. It's great to have that partnership with someone who is a social worker with a lens towards, drug and alcohol prevention. One of the things that stands out is that she had been talking about what that looks like and how to manage that when it comes up in a family structure, and a variety of different ways students have to navigate how they can be effectively managing health and wellness, sometimes in relationship to drugs or alcohol. And she pushed into health classes in the 10th grade. Grade level counseling, I know that Mr. Farrell will talk about, but we had a great faculty meeting in December with the Lower Hudson Valley GLSEN. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Last spring, through Ms. Quintano's advocacy, we had JCK come in and talk about, again, removing stigmas related to mental health self-advocacy. JCK, based in Dobbs Ferry, doing presentations to really help young people hear stories of self-advocacy and the need to, again, remove stigma when students need to take care of themselves, mental health supports and structures. Mr. Farrell and the counseling team do a critical job for looking at transitions and helping our students move not only from 8th grade into 9th, but from 9th into 10th through 12th. Tier 2 and Tier 3, I think Mr. Farrell and the team were going to talk more about, and I don't know, Gene, if you wanted to just bring it back to talk about Tier 2 and Tier 3?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And that's, Tier 2 and Tier 3, and the discussion we've been having has been really robust because it's, Dr. Farrell, that was great. The conversation we've been having with Tier 2 and Tier 3, thank you, Lynn, for doing that to me, have been really robust. We've had the opportunity, along with Ms. Quintano and the core group, to have discussions about what we actually have in place and what levers we have when students start getting into higher levels of need. We recently hired, as you're well aware, with Ms. Quintano, some of the things that she can do as a service with wraparound and referrals to outside resources. That's been really tremendous. And I think it's really important for our committee to all know, now we're with this committee up and running, we're all familiar with the different things that we can do as we start getting students who might go into more crises, and we're starting to deal with more anxiety and other different issues. So before we jump to that highest level, we can do the obvious interventions with working with a counselor or Tier 2. But when I'm looking at some of the lists of here, these things came up because we weren't all, it takes almost a group of people together to really have those conversations, which didn't necessarily happen comprehensively prior to maybe last year. So it's an ever-growing list. But when I'm looking at things as we speak now, we're talking about things that require a higher level of time and commitment from our staff, and it's that top tier, that 1% to 3%. So I'm looking from the bottom up about crisis intervention or home or wellness visits when students or might be school phobic or dealing with mental health issues that we need to visit the home. We're looking at hospitalizations and or suspensions and returning back. So there's a lot of planning, as some people might be aware, when students are coming back from hospitalization for whatever that hospitalization might be. We're getting them reintegrated back and to make sure there's a transition plan. Sometimes we don't always just have the kids start the next day, the student the next day. A lot of times we make sure, we say, okay, so what's a good plan to make sure they work their way back in? And sometimes that includes home instruction part of the time, and then the other part being them coming back for a few live classes, because we do need to look at things and plans like that quite a bit. Bridge is an intervention. So when students enter Bridge, we have a rubric that we sit down as a committee for. So we have discussions about whether it's appropriate and whether that level of service, which is a wonderful program, that we can use as well too. There's new student orientations. Of course, I spoke about mandated counseling. Behavior intervention plans, because we have a behavioralist on staff, so we do things like that as well too and refer out with the support of the psychologists or the social workers. So there's lots of different things, DBT groups and so forth. So this is not an exhaustive list. There's lots of other interventions out there, but it certainly having the ability to really flesh this out and build like the bones of this program has really made it really tremendous for me and powerful for me, because it's very systemic in the way we're approaching this. And it's been great before, but now we actually have having Ms. Quintano on staff and able to have a person earmarked for various services is tremendous in serving the students too. So thank you for that.
Right. So just to build upon that, I was reading off of, I guess, the left side of the screen, and Mr. Farrell was bringing us now to the right side of the screen, and that 2 and 3 parenthetical is really the indicator of what is a Tier 2 approach. And again, to think about that triangle that we had shown at the beginning, Tier 1 is essentially for everyone. Let's say 80% of your community. Tier 2 is going to be for smaller groups, and Tier 3 is very targeted at the individual level. Okay. Obviously, we shared this information each year, and some of these photos came from the newsletter. Thank you, Dr. Chan, for acknowledging that we sent out just the other week, but Pelham Memorial High School has had robust student-led clubs for years. That type of space actually deserves prominence at a presentation on mental health and wellness, although some of the clubs are in fact geared towards whether it be cultural identity or gender expression or other forms of affinity of the body or mind, if you will. Others more academic in nature. The point is that at a high school level, to have agency and to self-identify what is a topic that's meaningful for me, whether it be chess, whether it be the Gaelic League, whether it be, again, a GSA, whether it be a service like our Interact Club, which is connected with the Pelham Rotarians. When students can say, here's something I'm interested in, here's another group of young people who are either of the same grade or of a different grade who I can meet, that I have space to bond with students that I don't necessarily have class with, along with the students who I have class with. That agency is really important at the high school level. As you all know, it leads to activism, not only here for the local community, building upon foundations from middle school, but also for what students end up doing in their post-secondary plans in college or career. You have to put these ideas into action. So student-led clubs are really important because people can bond and talk through the issues that are important to them. In addition to that, of course, this year, and we talked about this during the transition meeting several months ago, we had a 9th grade bonding day that took place at Glover Field with an outside group, team bonding. So many of our students, of course, are coming from the middle school and have a strong foundation of working with each other. But we do have new students to the district each year as 9th graders. And having that bonding experience is not singular, but it is one step in trying to bring all members into this new setting of Pelham Memorial High School. DBT, again, Ms. Quintana will talk a little bit more about, but taking place in the health classes. JCK I just mentioned. Building upon the very important support and partnership with Pelham Together and the generous funding of Pelham Education Foundation. As you all know, Chris Herron bringing his story of really decision-making, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. It's worth reiterating that, mental health and substance use and or abuse is obviously well documented, and Chris Herron and his adult struggles really from high school into college, into his NBA career, into his post-NBA career. When he presented, he talked with our young people about the why, and the standout line, of course, was essentially, why does a young person feel the need to essentially self-medicate through drugs and alcohol when they're essentially, in his example, with the same group of kids that they knew as 5-year-olds or kindergartners? If you could be with them in kindergarten and be just fine, why do you suddenly need to enter someone's basement and to self-medicate through drugs or alcohol as a teenager? And that question about what's essentially getting in the way or driving these decisions, being presented in a lot of different settings, be JCK and knowing how to self-advocate for mental health and wellness, traditionally defined, to Chris Herron talking about its intersection with drugs or alcohol. Very, very important. And we're going to be continuing to be deliberate about the ways in which we can create a cycle of special events and speakers so that it's not a one-off, this group got this speaker and that group got that speaker, but how do we plan for a 4-year cycle where we know that these are some major topics that our students are going to get in addition to health class, in addition to our traditional faculty, but through some of the, as Mr. Llewellyn talked about, where you remember these one-offs because they are singular, some of these outside speakers. Of course, the Olympics are an annual tradition. Some of you at this table participated in the Olympics when you were at Pelham Memorial High School, and of course your children know and look forward to it, if I may acknowledge. We can't wait to have the Olympics back, and it's something that we look forward to. Just acknowledge that the Olympics will be taking place in June this year, so we can take all of our energy and be outside. But at our faculty meeting today, our essay advisors are talking about some special events that we have planned for March to make sure that March, which is a long month, can remain a site of real celebration and, frankly, release in the mental health and wellness and self-care that the Olympics provides for our high school community. So stay tuned for more updates on that. Just mentioned Chris Herron, but again, talking about getting feedback. One of our students said it was a deeply, sorry, let me move this slide. It was a deeply moving assembly. It made me feel more prepared should I ever have a friend going through drug problems. That was just a way a student responded. A teacher said it was excellent. It was one of the best assemblies we've ever had. And the point is having real world experience and having honest talk. That authenticity resonated with the community. And we are grateful again for Pelham Together and bringing that through the funding also of the PEF. This is, again, an image that we presented in October, but it was really nice to have the 9th grade transition, and we look forward to repeating it in the fall. Again, just an opportunity to not only bring the kids together and to deliberately do it in October. There's some reason behind it. The opening days are enough of a transition. We want to almost bring them into yet another form of support about a month into the school year. So we're excited about that. And then, as mentioned, the GLSEN presentation was digital. We had hoped that they would be with us in person, but it was December, is right as our latest, quarantine or COVID concerns spiked, and so they presented virtually to our faculty. We look forward to continuing to work with them. I think that GLSEN's important, and in this case, the presenters were talking in the first person. If you're not familiar with GLSEN, it's an educators network, volunteer-led in many ways, to bring to students and to schools a place where every community member can feel respected for who they are. They have a particular focus on gender identity and sexual orientation and gender expression, but ultimately their goal is to make sure that everyone feels welcome at the table. And in this instance, we had 3 speakers that came to us, again, through the Google Meet. The youngest, if you will, was a college student right now at SUNY Purchase, talking about their experience in high school, being who they are and some of the struggle about authentically describing who they were and acceptance within the home structure, navigating that. And this person is essentially an intern for the GLSEN Lower Hudson Valley chapter. The next person was quite remarkable, was frankly a senior citizen who talked about a gender transition and gender identity narrative that really was incredible because the arc of time was so pronounced. In other words, we had a young person who was already in college and kind of knew who they were, and an adult who was a senior citizen who said, it took a long while for me to be who I am. And then the third speaker was speaking as a grandparent and what it is to support and to love their grandchild and the ways that the grandparent can support a child, meaning their child who's the parent, and their grandchild who was dealing with all of these issues of gender identity and gender expression in elementary school. So having those first-person narratives shared with our faculty and having some refresher, if you will, in relationship to pronouns and some of the more timely matters about how we create inclusive vocabulary, really, really powerful, and we look forward to continuing to work with, again, GLSEN. finally, and it's not finally because the work will always be continuing, but I'd like to pass the speaker's mic over to our social worker, Ms. Kristen Quintana.
Do I have to hold it or just talk closer? Okay.
Hello. So DBT has been talked about a lot this evening. I just want to, before I go into these 4 different components, just talk a little bit about what DBT is. So DBT, the underlying philosophy of DBT is that 2 things can seem like opposites, but in fact both be true at the same time. So a fundamental dialectic in DBT is that of acceptance and change. I'm doing the best that I can in the moment, and, not but, you had mentioned that before, Mr. Berkowitz, I need to be doing better, right? So that's the fundamental philosophy of DBT. When DBT was first founded, it was meant as a model with 4 different components: individual therapy, phone coaching, a consultation team for the therapists, and then a skills group for the participants who are participating in dialectical behavioral therapy. What we do in school, so 4 years ago, we started DBT groups, where it was more of a comprehensive DBT, and then 3 years ago, we started introducing some of DBT Steps A. So what I'm going to talk about specifically is Steps A, the DBT Steps A, which is really just those skills groups taken out. So it's not the therapy, it's not the phone coaching, it's not the consultation team, it's that group. And those skills that we talk about and that we learn are mindfulness skills, emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. So the curriculum is meant to be 30 lessons. And each lesson is about 50 minutes long, and that's how it's written. It starts with mindfulness, there's a homework review, there's a teaching of a new lesson, and then a summary and an assignment of homework. And each lesson provides main points, materials, a lesson overview and a timeline, and a detailed lesson plan and homework assignment. So if we're looking at the actual curriculum, that's what it's provided. So what we've been able to do in the high school, starting 3 years ago, I went into the English classes and started with mindfulness. And we were able to run 6 lessons of mindfulness, and I did the same thing in the health classrooms. And then the health teachers were trained in DBT Steps A and have started to incorporate Steps A into their curriculum in health. Like I said, it's meant to be a 30-lesson curriculum, and right now we're breaking off like what we can chew and haven't gotten to the point of fully implementing that Steps A curriculum. But that's Steps A.
I just wanted to add, the reason why we chose the Universal DBT Steps A program is when you look at these components, if you think about what Responsive Classroom is doing, they're pretty much aligned. You know, when you're talking about social emotional wellness and being responsible and being respectful and all of that and really understanding your own emotions, they are basically the same concepts. It's just different programs are out there, and so it's really a matter of which one do we want to implement. And I think with any program, there are a lot of wonderful evidence-based, research-based programs out there, but it's really about implementation and who's doing it. And kind of like what Jessica was saying earlier, we got to have the right people who believe in the program to implement it the right way and really with fidelity. And we chose this because we did start the DBT program with CBC out of White Plains 4 years ago for our Tier 3 and for our special education TSP program. We just felt that it just naturally fits in with bringing in the classroom DBT so that we're teaching the same skills, so that we're speaking the same language for Tier 1, 2, and 3. So that's the reason behind why we chose that particular program. What I wanted to also add was, I know that Michael had a question regarding our relationship with Office of Mental Health. And, you know, we do have, it's not just our internal support that we have as our employees, but we also work with outside resources. So I actually asked Greg to be here because he has a lot of wealth of knowledge in working with Office of Mental Health, but also I want him to talk a little bit about, you know, there's a lot of overlap between supporting students with in general education and also special education. And at some point, what happens is when you have a student who's struggling for more than 6 months with something, whether it's anxiety, depression, then you get into, okay, this is something that's seems to be a lot more than just an acute situation. So then we talk about how do we support this student? Is this student going to be somebody who has a disability and we need to give them like a 504 plan or an IEP? So it kind of starts crossing over into, us really thinking about, is this a student that we need to really do an evaluation on? And then, so there are many different programs out there that we can also kind of lean on, and BOCES and definitely Office of Mental Health is something that we use. So I'll turn it over to Greg.
Okay, so, is this on? Okay. I treat myself as a phone a friend for MTSS team, so I get to be a visiting member to both the middle school and high school when they have questions, especially with the higher level tier 3s, possibly pre-referral to the Committee on Special Education. So when it comes to this, Southern Westchester BOCES is one of our largest partners. They have really wonderful programs and supports for our students on the mental health side if we need to. They have some programs that are called BASIS services, which is before and after school intervention services. So some of our students that are struggling to get to school in the morning, that's a service that we actually contract with BOCES, and they have social workers, teaching assistants, and other clinicians that can actually push into the house. Pre-COVID, it was actually in person. With COVID, now everything is virtual, but they'll do phone calls in the morning, coaching to help those students get to school, and they're in contact with our social workers and psychologists. Also, through Southern Westchester BOCES, they have what's called intensive day treatment. So what intensive day treatment is it's a partnership with Rockland Children's Psychiatric Hospital and Southern Westchester BOCES. So Southern Westchester BOCES actually has the educational component, and Rockland Children's Psychiatric has the psychiatric and social emotional component. And school districts all over Westchester County will send students up there. The districts bus them. Some families choose to drive them. They have a K-5 program, and then they have a 6-12 program. And those are short-term, and the whole plan of that is to help support students transitioning back. It could be students coming out of a hospital setting, or it could be a student that's just really struggling emotionally and needs kind of a program to reset. The psychiatrist, the consulting psychiatrist at IDT will work, if the family has their own private psychiatrist, to work on medication management, and then work with developing a transition plan back to school. So that's one of the tiers of intervention that we have. What's unique in Westchester County is when we have to partner with the community, the Office of Mental Health. And I think somebody mentioned wraparound meetings. That's something that school districts are encouraged to do. We actually got to attend a conference, the school psychologist and Kristen, on wraparound meetings. And what that is you find all the supports that a child needs. Those supports could be their grandmother, their pastor, and their art teacher, and then what other kind of resources that they may need as well. And we all come together to what used to be a room, now it's all virtual. And it's led by a community partner. So Family Services of Westchester is one of those agencies that run those wraparound meetings, so we'll bring them in. The social workers usually run those meetings with them. And they talk about the students' strengths, but then also about what their needs are, and then what kind of services could be provided through our community partners. So what's in Westchester County, they have what's called the single point of access, SPOA. So any student that needs support through the Office of Mental Health, or in Westchester County, it's a community mental health for children. They have what's called single point of access. So it's one application. It's actually not even that bad of an application that is submitted to them. And the Office of Mental Health then, in consultation with us and the family, make those determinations on what kind of additional community-based services may be available to that family. So it's a really unique thing. Westchester County is one of the only counties in New York State that has a single point of access, so it's not trying to figure out who to contact, what services am I applying for. You fill out one application, and then they kind of help guide that program. Those can be anything from mobile mental health, where there's supports going to the child's home, to everything up to community residence, where a student might live in the community in a setting like a house. They have a program. One house is up in Pleasantville. There's a house in New Rochelle with a small group of 8 boys, girls, it depends. And it's all therapeutically supported. And again, they go to their home school districts. to even residential treatment facilities if they need that kind of level of care. So that all goes through the single point of access in Westchester County. They're a wonderful resource for us. We use them a lot. We're on the phone with them a lot about our students. Whether the student, if they have private treating insurance, a lot of our families do, they might only be able to access certain things, but once they get to a certain level, there are ways that the families can work with the Office of Mental Health to get additional services that would not impact their private treating insurance as well.
So that's kind of from tier 1 to the most restrictive support that we could possibly give to our students. And as you can see, we have a lot of expertise within our, within our district. But we definitely partner with outside folks as well because we can't always provide everything to our families. But we have great relationships with them, and we do what we can to support them. Questions? I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah. I have one question. You mentioned Rockland County Children's Psych Center. That's an inpatient facility, right?
But they're the mental health component of that BOCES program. So the students aren't at Rockland Children's Psychiatric. Rockland Children's Psychiatric is the psychiatrist, the treating psychiatrist is a contractor for them.
I see. So we're not actually placing?
No.
Okay.
No. And that's what's unique with the school district partnership. That's why IDT exists, because it is that partnership between school districts and hospital settings.
I had a quick question for Sharon. You brought up how long you've been here and that you've seen things change. And so just curious, kind of, what are some of the top things that you've seen shift in recent years?
Oh, God, I really want to think about that. It shifts and then it shifts back.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've noticed it shift and shift back. So it isn't like everything is shifted. Right now with COVID, the kids are a little younger. They're experimenting less because they don't have the access to it. So we're not seeing anything, in middle school. I've seen anxiety, of course, go up. But I've also seen a lot more resilience. I do a lot of reading about COVID and the effect of kids and teenagers. And personally, I have seen a lot of resilience and a lot of kids who will tell me, like when I went into the classroom at the beginning of the year, I asked every kid, so tell me, how is COVID? Give me the pluses, what are the minuses? And they had a lot of them, not all, had a lot of pluses. The family bonding, I think they had to become more responsible. So there is, some benefits. Every year I'll say, I'll say to Lynn, there's this overarching thing that's changing. And then it just kind of, it comes and goes, kids change. I wish I could put my.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's a great question because we do look for those trends.
Yeah.
And, we do try to help. We do really, and I think you would say the same thing. We change based on, what the kids' needs are. Sometimes in the spring, they're just, everything just sets off and we regroup and do some different classes.
I had a similar question, just sort of, we do read a lot about the pandemic's impact on the mental health of all of us. I mean, I know as adults, we all feel it too. And just was curious to know what impacts you're seeing at this point. Now we're back to full-time in person, for nearly a year. And especially as we plan for next year. We made a lot of guesses about what the needs of this year would be, but I think we have a better understanding of where we are, so.
I think Sharon's point, the maturity of our students. Sorry. I was just reiterating what Sharon was saying about the maturity of our students. So our 9th graders are not presenting as 9th graders. They're presenting as 7th graders. Some as 8th graders. Our 10th graders presenting as 8th graders. So I think that that's a huge thing that we're seeing. I'm seeing a lot of students who have more phobia, like fears of being in front of their peers, right? So when we went into lockdown and everyone was behind a computer, it was the fear of turning the camera on. We had that whole phase of students not wanting to be seen in that way. And now that we're back in person, being seen again in person is really challenging for a lot of students. And friendships and friend dynamics, because people have been so isolated and have been navigating their friendships on their cell phones and not face to face. So learning how to interact again with one another in a social setting has been really challenging.
Yeah.
And then just
I would agree, the friendships, have been really complicated and for the kids, and conflict resolution and talking things
Yep.
out.
Microphone
I'm
guard.
sorry.
And also like the test anxiety, right? So we just went through midterms. It was the first time that some of our students have taken that kind of exam ever, right, as an 11th grader, because they just didn't have something like that. And some of our younger kids as well, or for some of our older kids doing it as a senior now, couldn't remember what it was like. So processing what that experience was going to be like for them. And we've seen, for us in the high school, there have been more hospitalizations for more severe things, right? So not necessarily, if we look at the number of hospitalizations, they might not be so much more elevated than in the past, but I would say that the severity of why students are hospitalized, I've seen an uptick in that for sure.
And in that same breath, and tell me if I'm wrong, but with the heightened level of violence that we're seeing the students exhibit, can we talk a little about that? How what's going on from the mental health side and what we're doing to possibly help from that angle?
I'm going to just jump in to say we're continuing to make sure that we are meeting with students in the form of, like, we had met with, obviously after some of the stuff from the fall, we had like a handful of meetings, if that's what you're referring to. Maybe you're referring to just violence in the world, but I think we're talking about school-based violence, close proximity or otherwise. I think it's very important that students know that we have these range of services. So we've tried to reiterate, first off, just proactive structures to make the building physically safe, and then also the range of resources for emotional safety. And since we're on camera, I just want to remind folks that the point of contact is the counseling office, and to come in. I'll tell you very deliberately without mentioning the child's name. You know, we walk the building at the start of the day, the same way like mindful morning meeting happens at K-5, and then you heard our K-5 colleagues talk about giving a high five to kids as they walk into the room. We are walking the building at the start of the day at 7:30 when kids come in. Just today, a young person came up to me and said to me specifically, I need someone to talk, I mean, straight away, good morning, I need someone to talk with, I need someone right now. We checked in, brought him to the counselor. That child's counselor wasn't in the building, but a counselor was, and we scooped that child up who had some real reason to talk. Ms. Quintano came down as well. That was like the process working, right? So you have the proactive and the pro-social structures, and then you have we're gonna make sure that we're there to scoop up the kids who need it. Sometimes we don't know when we walk in who's gonna need what, but when they are, we wanna make sure that we've got the range of resources there to pick them up, if you will.
That's exactly the direction I was going in, the support services that we have available for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also, again, that the child self-advocated, walked up to me and said, Mr. Berkowitz, I need to speak with someone right now. How can I help?
And I think, I think that's the uptick that I've seen within my office, is that there's been a lot of good self-advocacy by the kids, right? So the students are coming into our office and saying we need to talk very frequently, and then in turn, the counselors are coming to me or to Ms. Quintano or and the process is starting. So it's very timely that we have the committee up and running and running in a very methodical way, because students are advocating much more than I've ever seen before, which is great.
And I'm sorry, I want to say one other thing is we always stress that if a friend is in trouble, if you're worried about someone, come and talk, find someone and help them, because if they're telling you, they are looking for help. So a lot of our referrals are a friend coming, I'm worried about my friend, and then we scoop up a lot of that. So that's a huge access point.
And it's just key that they know that those resources are available, and continue stressing that those resources are available to them at any time, any day of the week.
Yeah, I've noticed more friend referrals than ever before, because I think getting back into a routine, getting back into school, as Kristen said, we battled that turn your camera on. Now they're here. And so we have a lot more students coming in to share their concerns about friends.
Great.
What that says to me is that there's a level of trust that the students have that they'll be listened to and not judged. So whether it's for themselves or for a friend, that there's a level of trust there. That's very reassuring.
And do you find that there are good communications between the teachers and the support staff as well? And if they sense a kid's not in a good
was
spot
just
that
gonna-
day, or they're seeing a pattern?
Yeah, and also our monitors. We have some monitors that are very connected to our students. And when they're able to be in the hallways, they'll see a lot of things that may happen, or the students will go up to them and share with them. And teachers will call a monitor over and have those conversations, and then we all team up.
Same for the high school. There's been a lot of great, I mean, we have a in middle school and high school, we have a wonderful. I know.
Microphone.
Got it twice. Jeez. We have a really, in middle school as well too, but there's a really communicative teaching faculty here, and they reach out, and they work on interventions before it even gets to us, and then they say as a sidebar, by the way, I'm working with him or her, I have concerns. Get messages, frequently about that, and so it's been certainly, they've been wonderful as far as the staff and faculty goes, and they communicate with us.
We've had a lot of parent calls, noticing things when children are at their house, their friends, that may say, you may want to touch base with this parent, I'm a little concerned. So I've had more of that this year than ever before.
That makes a lot of sense, because as a parent in middle school and high school, you start detaching, from the other parents of your kids' friends. You don't always know the parents as well. So
Yeah.
I could see how the school would be a resource for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great.
I was looking over the Surgeon General's advisory on youth mental health, and there's a section on what educators, school staff, and school districts can do. There's just a 2-page summary, and there's about 10 points, and I think pretty much every point you all have covered tonight, so I think that's really encouraging. One question I had done some research, and I think through the Department of Health and Human Services, there's a National Center for School Mental Health, and what they recommend is basically what we're doing. One element that I didn't hear mentioned is sort of universal screening, and in terms of screening for anxiety, depression, and substance abuse, and I wonder what people think about that. And it would be, of course, a big commitment and a lot of resources needed to follow up that, but I wonder if that's ever been something that people have considered.
Actually, I was working with the elementary psychologist in looking at some universal screeners for social emotional, well-being of students. And the challenge that we were running into is there are screeners out there that actually special education uses for like ADD and for like anxiety and different things, executive functioning. Those take a long time. And so when we're talking about a universal screener, we want something that is short but captures a lot, which is really hard to find. So we did start looking at them. We can certainly continue to look at them and see if we can find an appropriate one. It's kind of like the Ames web, right? The benchmarks that we use. And I know Tom had talked about the math screeners that he used. There are a lot more academic screeners out there than screeners for like behaviors and the well-being, the mental health for students. But yes, we will definitely look at it.
So we have the high achieving school survey, right? But that can identify and incorporate some of the questions about anxiety and depression, but it's not actionable at the individual level to say this, person scored at high risk, let's get them referred.
It's like cohort based, right? It helps provide you with some understanding of what programming you might put into place and grade by grade, right?
Juliet, you'd mentioned, I know at the elementary level, the Fly 5 is built into the schedule. Can you talk a little bit about Steps A and how that might, how we might be able to make a program like that more systemic at the secondary level.
I know that Krista mentioned earlier that we've really only been able to maybe implement 6 lessons. I think the challenge is the balance. In order for us to implement something else, something has to come out. And so, right now, kids' schedules are completely packed with academics. And, we can certainly add some of these lessons into the health class, but not every single grade level takes health. And it's only 1 semester long, and the health classes also have its own curriculum. So I know that what Kim is doing at the high school is trying to figure out if there are some alignment in terms of the health curriculum and what the lessons from Steps A has, and to kind of put them where it kind of fits. But that's been a challenge for us to try to really implement it with fidelity, because in order for it to really make a difference, it needs to be like all 30 lessons. And so we've been discussing this for now going on 2 years, trying to figure out what is the best way to do this without taking away from anything else. And it's been challenging. So it's an ongoing discussion for us to try to figure that out.
And when we first started with Steps A, I spoke with the creators of the program, the Mazas, and I said, how many lessons do I need to do in order for this to be effective? And they said, honestly, at least 10, and that is like the bare minimum. And so they can work with us on how to parse it out a little bit so that we can pepper it in, and it doesn't have to be all at once. But in order for us to really do it with fidelity, it has to be more than it is currently, and finding the space and the time in order to be able to do it, and prioritize where that goes. And again, it's that it's a hard balance, and teachers want it, and they welcome me in their classrooms. And 6 lessons is a lot. 6 lessons is a lot to take from an English class, for example.
Yeah, and I know, just to rewind pre-pandemic, I know that, we'd done work with the elementary master schedule with Michael Reddig, and I know there were intentions to move that work forward at the secondary level. So I think this certainly is one area that may be a critical look through an expert who can figure out exactly how do we maintain the rich course offerings that our students want, but also find ways to more structurally be able to deliver this kind of curriculum could help us long term. So, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question for Lynn. I don't know if you can answer this given what's happened with the pandemic, but I'm curious if you've seen any readiness in an emotional way of your students who have come through the responsive classroom program. Did you have too much of a blip with COVID to be able to recognize that?
Yeah, the 6th grade has taken a while to settle in. And we noticed their behaviors are much better. But originally, just even getting along with each other, recess, cafeteria, hallways, that was a really, really big challenge. And so we've seen a lot of changes with that. It's a little hard to tell, to be honest. Doesn't mean that, they're not able to transfer some of that. As time goes on, we may have a better handle on that. And, in speaking with Sharon, having her bring some of those lessons that we heard from the elementary school, and especially to the 6th grade, I think we'll be able to tell better that way.
Right. Well, it's very nice to hear what you just said based on the meeting we had earlier this year when you were reporting about some of the less mature behaviors that you were seeing. It sounds like students have gotten a little more acclimated to the routines.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Well, Julia and the team, I thank you so much for this incredible overview. And thanks to the elementary folks. I know they're not here as well. But your expertise is really, really appreciated, and the thoughtfulness that went into this presentation. I think it was just incredibly well done. So thank you from me, and I'm sure from the board as well.
To hear
Thank
about
you very
this
much.
K through 12. Whenever we hear about what we do with the whole continuum in mind, I think it helps all of us, to see what we're accomplishing. So,
Okay, keep up the great work.
Very good.
Sleep fast.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the
Thank you,
morning.
thank you.
Thank you all so much.
John?
My turn. So I have an announcement. This is my last year in this term, my present term, my 13th year on this board. I think I beat Will Kavanaugh by a year. Sorry, Will.
That was your goal, right? You wanted to
It was
have
my
the
goal all
record,
along. 3.5 years ago, there became vacancies, 2 vacancies on the board due to early retirements. Myself and my colleague here, Vinny, put our names in the hat and somehow got selected. And it's been really a pleasure to be back here. Education has changed so dramatically from the last time I served on this board, every aspect of it. And of course, then we had a COVID thrown in. So I just wanted to say to the public and the people out there watching and listening that I would encourage you to seriously consider serving on the Board of Education. I've always said, and I've always believed, that I got more personally out of this than I probably contributed. Sorry to say, but the personal growth that comes with serving in this position and the amount you learn is astonishing. So in addition to, you know, lending whatever expertise and perhaps wisdom that we might from time to time, you gain a tremendous amount from that experience. So I use that, I want to say that because I think people have the perception that it's a thankless job, that it's an unending job, that it's, you know, it requires a tremendous amount of time. And yes, there's a certain mental energy and mental bandwidth that goes into doing this job. But trust me, you will not regret it, and you will take away a life-changing experience from doing it. So anyway, that's my little plug for people who may be on the fence about doing this job. It's you know, I have such respect for my colleagues and for the people that work for this district, who are the leadership in this district. And tonight, I heard Sarah, who was in my son's class in high school. And I know her parents very well and have for years. And to hear her, you know, talk the way she does and what a dynamic person and educator she is, it's just astonishing to me. She came up through Pelham and she became a shining example of what Pelham produces. So anyway, that's my announcement. So I encourage anybody who, did I say that I'm not running? I don't think I said that.
Well, you did
I'm
now.
sorry. I'm not running.
But maybe you'll listen to your own words and you'll decide to run again.
No, I don't think so. When I ran 3.5 years ago, my wife said, "It's just for a year, right? You're just filling out the term of the
It's a
people who
free
retired."
option.
And I said, "Yeah, it's just for a year. Don't worry." 4 years later. Anyway, so that's all I have to say. And if anybody has any questions about what serving on the board entails, feel free to call me or email me. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, it's been we'll roast you at the end of the year.
absolutely.
Your
Yeah, I
last
know.
meeting, I'll save all the compliments, but it's been very nice having your expertise. You're a former board president, so that's definitely, you provided some great advice as I've been in this role and
You don't need my advice.
and to have the historical view on board service in this district has been helpful, so.
This is an unusual way to make this announcement. In days past, we would have written Maggie Klein an email, and she would have put it in the paper. But I don't feel comfortable with any of the other media outlets that we have now, so I decided to do it directly. Facebook wasn't appropriate somehow. So anyway, thank you.
Very good. So, Leah?
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vinnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night, everybody.
Aye.